Don't Worry Darling is a bit of a mess. Is it a glorious mess and so bad it's good kind of mess, or just worthless mess? Well, I think it's a little bit in between. I know some people keep telling me it's this very strong work of genius and one of the best films of the year. I have to humbly disagree. I understand where they're coming from. It's a very ambitious film, but I think even after a very interesting opening and some very dazzling performances, kind of loses its way after a while and just becomes a very meandering, very below average entry. So, what exactly is occurring? Well, we have a female protagonist called Alice. And if you think it's that kind of film, yeah, it's that kind of film. And I have to say, they kind of give it away way too early. So, we know it's kind of very weird environment that they're in. Something is not quite right with Alice or her environment and her world, and of course, he's in this very weird kind of suburb that just looks a little too clean, a little too white, a little too bright. And shocker, things are not as they appear. And there's a dark, grim reality underneath the flashing lights and the veneer of respectability. And there is some good stuff. I think Chris Pine comes off very effective as this very creepy, very odd antagonist. So I liked him a lot. He communicated very early and effectively. He is a strange and evil man. But besides him and a few other kind of good minor performances, there's not much here. Now, the cinematography was excellent, and I thought Olivia Wilde did pull off some really impressive things with camera movements and them just filming certain aspects of the world. But in terms of the actual narrative and the way it was filmed, that felt very weak. Unlike other people, I don't just concentrate on plot. I do think these other elements matter, but the problem is, even there, it's very, very derivative. I mean, the plot is very close to Get Out. It's taking a lot from The Truman Show. It's like a Twilight Zone episode that just went really badly awry. And again, I'm pretty generous towards the Twilight Zone. I think, of course, the first series is excellent. It kept getting weaker as it went on. But again, the version that they had in the 1980s and even some of the other updated episodes aren't terrible. It's just we've been here before. We kind of know what to expect. We've done this before. So it's really hard to do some groundbreaking stuff. But it's still possible to merge science fiction and drama. It's just this didn't quite do it in a very, at least, organic fashion. I can respect people who say the way it was constructed was well done and they were satisfied, but I just still have a lot of questions how this project works out. What is even the point? How are people not going to be noticing that people are gone? It's supposed to be this feminist, I guess, liberation project, but the cast is on record that they kind of cut out the black people. They kind of have this very bad behind the scenes drama that it's not this feminist project it makes itself out to be. So, just at the obvious level, this kind of feels like an interesting attempt, but the ideas needed a lot more work and the execution is very faulty in many areas. And apparently, there are original versions of the script that were much more edgy, and the satire where it was stronger. But what we have now is just kind of a clutter of interesting ideas, but they never quite mesh together to be a very focused or cohesive narrative. And I'm okay with a loose narrative. I like David Lynch films, but this kind of just felt like really substandard Lynch, really. I mean, again, it's fine to imitate a master, it's fine to try to work within a style that others have established. It just felt the imagery after a while was just borrowing way too much from Lynch, way too much from Kubrick. Didn't really seem to have its own voice. I mean, you have Darren Aronofsky, he's a big Kubrick person. And I'm not the biggest fan of Black Swan, but whatever else, that was genuinely scary and riveting in several places. I never really quite felt scared for Alice. It just felt, okay, we know you're in trouble and we know you're in a threatening situation, but given where we're going to go with this, I'm not really fearful of this world taking over. It just feels too plastic, too unreal, not to mention uneconomical. You just imagine the costs here. Like, how would this work in just in terms of pure money? At least with the Truman Show, we kind of understand. Okay, he's being sort of put into this bubble. We're gonna look at him. They're making money selling his misery, basically. But how are they making money through this project? It just feels like they didn't really think through the world building. We just have to take the narrative for what it is. So the positive side, I guess it's an engaging central performance with Frances Pugh. I like her, but frankly, her most recent work, I'm not a big fan of the Black Widow stuff or her other stuff, but She is talented enough, so that performance was engaging, but it just felt beyond some interesting performances, some dazzling shots of cinematography here and there. The music and the world building and a lot of the plot just seems very iffy, and it just felt too rickety to sustain what they're trying to say because it's trying to go for some really deep, big targets, but to me, it just fell flat on its face. But there is some good stuff here. There are moments and scenes that are very strong. I really can't go higher than a 5.75. I think that's being very generous, but it just feels like these good ideas needed to be nurtured much more carefully. Olivia Wilde is definitely talented, but maybe she just wasn't the right choice for this kind of material at this point in time with this way of looking at this idea of a woman trapped in a paradise that's really a living hell.